it's interesting now. I've been doing this for a while. I'll go set scrapes up and I'll put cameras on them, like the first 3, 4, 5 days, week, 10 days or whatever of ton of activity, and then they go dead because the scent has dissipated and been gone, and the deer just naturally didn't want to be there, so they're not coming back. And I'm like, they're telling me something.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
Well, Kevin Vistisen from the Deer Hunter Podcast and DH3, or did you rename it Deer Hunter Synthetics, or is that just what the website is?
Yeah, we evolved the company out of DH. It was originally a 3-part system and just one product. And as we developed some more product, and it just our launch platform no longer, we kind of outgrew our launching platform, and it didn't really fully make sense to move forward as DH3. So Deer Hunter Synthetics is what we decided on, what we landed on. And that pretty much covers, what we're doing right now, manufacturing synthetic deer scents and lures. And yeah, the website just went operational. Like, man, that stuff takes so long to execute on. You look at it and you say like, oh, we'll get this done right away. And then it's like later, it's just like, it's so just, it's crazy how much work, but we're through all that finally. And the new website's live and packaging's done, being rebranded and operational. Our prices, which I couldn't imagine would have been able to do that, but part of that's scaling back on wholesale and just trying to give the best, the price to online consumers. We're not really wholesale right now. We're more like a local bakery. We make a lot, and we don't make it fast. We make good and slow. So the e-commerce thing is a little bit of a monster, but provided we can keep that forward, I think we'll have a viable pathway forward, and we were able to get our costs down and pass that on to the consumer. So yeah, we're relaunching as Deer Hunter Synthetics, like as of now. I don't know when this will go live, but it's early June when we're recording, mid-June. I guess it's now. What is today, the 17th?
Yeah.
Bananas.
Yeah,
we're a few weeks
crazy,
away
dude.
from 4th of July, so we planned on
actually,
having
this
it.
probably won't go. Or sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. We planned on having everything live and active like spring. And I'm glad that we have it live and active for like coming into the 4th of July. The website's already operational and going, because I'd be really stressing out if we hadn't gotten to that marker.
Man, it's so difficult I understand the struggles 100% of things thinking they're going to go quicker when it comes to websites, products, launching. All of that stuff is just like everything that you think should be simple, or like you have in your own head and you create these timelines and these goals for things. It's like so hard to be able to hit those, because there's so many small snags that come up in the middle of it, and it's really difficult. So I respect the grind there and pushing through and doing that, because man, it's not easy either. And like, so this will probably come out sometime in July as what the plan is. I'm a little bit ahead on episodes right now, but saying that we've been trying to rebuild everything from the ground up for Timber Ninja, and it's been like, dude, everything just takes so long to get things through, and just every time, and you're always, especially when you're relying on other people, and then they're running into snags, and they're relying on other people that are running into snags, and it just funnels down, when you're at the bottom of that funnel,
Right.
you're just getting shit dumped on you from all angles.
Yeah, well, what's the big ships turn slow and get into bigger projects and larger scale things. You know, when you're younger, it's easy to get a bunch of stuff done because you think you have big projects at the time, but it's like, what, clean your room, pick up dog poop. Like, you just get through things fast. But as you get later in life and you take on sizable projects, you kind of know going into it, like, this isn't going to be a sprint. It's going to be more of a marathon, you know, which I'm a terrible distance runner. I like to sprint and get things done. So I have to be a little bit conscious that I don't flow, and it's not my strongest assets is to like wait. You know how like a good running back in the NFL lead the line and like let the line open up the lane and go, whereas a young running back just plows right into there, dude. It's a little bit like that. And I always use the analogy of drag racing versus road racing. You got to know when to stand on the gas, get on the brake, coast a little bit. Otherwise, you're just, you know, you're going to go off the road. I've been off the road. I've been in the cabbage a whole bunch. I'm trying to get a handle on that. It's been touch and go. I'm really glad that we got through the website because we got a whole nother project going on through this summer that we've been working on for quite some time, and we haven't been able to allocate any resources to that. That product line really did well last year. Had some back end stuff that I wanted dialed in, you know, so it's really kind of been my primary focus. That, and I could never have imagined when I got going on it how captivated I would be. But I guess in hindsight, it kind of makes sense, right? Because we're like manipulating deer behavior, and I've been a pretty diehard deer hunter for a very long time. So now that we've kind of built this product and a method around this product, and we're trying to do a little bit of like rebrand around using scent products to hunt whitetails more like a trapper than a art shopper, if that, you know, analogy is not too harsh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I get it. And like just overall, I think it lends well like business to the deer hunters and people that are like obsessed with things like that, because business is a lot like hunting in the way I look at it, at least, is there's this, you know, there's this goal that you have to succeed or whatever it might be, but if you don't fall in love with that process that leads up to it, as much as it sometimes in the process, it sucks. Like as you're doing it, you're like, I hate this. I want to get through this. But then looking back, it's like, man, it's really cool to see what you've accomplished and got to that point. And then you fail a bunch of times, same like you do in hunting, and you just keep, you know, figure out, you learn things along the way and get better at them. Yeah. And I think it's cool.
You had the guy on that wrote the book, right? This is Michael Easter, the Comfort Crisis.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at that to as large of a scale or as little of a scale. And I have a theory as to why, like, you know, movie stars and especially like really successful musicians, when they like those big superstars, they like there's a lot of suicide amongst them, which is really sad and crazy, and you'd never think that because it's like these people are on top of the earth, you know what I mean? But I think as a human, when you get to this point where there's no more challenges, you like lose your will to live. I mean, I really believe that if you don't have challenges, and whether it happens really extreme, really fast, or it's just this real gradual thing, which you see outright, like all through modern society, it's like a slow death of somebody. I don't want to participate in that. So, giving myself some challenges, but I think if you don't have, I think it's just a human nature thing to need that, which, like you said, weird because it's like, why do I need all this frustration? I feel like I'd be doing a lot better off if I didn't have all this frustration, you know? But for some odd reason, we like need that to come around to the other side to be like, man, a nice day, you know?
Yeah, man, I totally agree with that. And it's funny. I've recently, like in the business and stuff, I've looked at ways on how I can, buy back my time per se, whether hiring out certain things or doing things to free up more of my time. But all I do is I fill that back up, because I do like that. Like, I'm not like, oh, just go lay back, like I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
Like the podcast editing stuff, I'm not doing that myself anymore. And Emily that's doing it for me is doing a great job, and I love being able to see that. And it's like that freed up a ton of time for me, but I filled it up right away with things of like, okay, I might, I'm doing more in-person podcasts, or I'm traveling and doing things like that, and working on things with Timber Ninja and trying to build out my website better and bring in products that I use that I'm selling directly through my website and things like that are just like completely out of my wheelhouse or I'm not used to doing, and just working on different things. But like, it's like a drug. Like, I'm addicted to doing those things, and it gives me that fulfillment, those small wins of it are just like, but I think what deer hunting really teaches you in a lot of that sense is the patience aspect of delayed gratification of like, like talking about, I'm like you in a lot of ways where it's like running, that young running back, we're trying to run through and just like, hit it and get things done. But at the same time, I feel like I've also learned to accept that things are going to take time. I just need to be consistent with doing things over and over again, and eventually it comes back around. It's always longer timelines than what you think.
Yeah. It's interesting when you start working with, a team, or you start employing people and giving off responsibilities. And that's part of the running back thing is like, okay, I move at 100 miles an hour, but this guy I work with, he might work at 90 miles an hour, but he's solid, right? Or versa. I have guys that I work with that like, it's like, hey dude, down. Okay. You're not winning the company today. We're going to be back here tomorrow, but I also been working in the trades for like 3 decades. Right. So that's part of it. I guess my point is sometimes I've looked at things and I'll be like, man, I can't afford to have you with me today. You slow me down, and then I think I started to look at that's like on me. Why haven't I got you up to speed, or why did I choose you in the first place? Do a better job of getting people around you that, have the same target. That's really challenging. So, I mean, we just hired we've had contractors working for us for last year for the scent company, but this year we have more contractors, and we have an employee that is basically running the fulfillment and shop side of things, shipping and receiving and all that good stuff. And so now manage an employee, and yeah, it's just, I guess to summarize, I'm getting long-winded. I've realized that there's 0% chance you're going to get as far ahead as if you just try to run 100 mile an hour and do it yourself. As if you figure out how to put people around you with common interests and goals, and you all like that energy and that momentum is going to be way bigger than what one person can do on their own. Like, it's going to take a team if you're going to expand and move forward, I guess.
Yeah, I'm reading Dave Ramsey's new book, Build a Business That You Love. I believe that's the name of it, and I'm just about finished with it. It's actually a pretty easy read, but I love business books. I love reading them, and like this one's super good because Dave like talks about team building and like the stages of being an entrepreneur or a business owner, from the treadmill operator stage when you're doing everything and you're working 16 hours a day going through it, and then when you start to delegate things, of learning how to let go, learning how to train, learning how to build that culture and get everybody on board with the same vision that you have, and so that they have that same motivation to do it. Because it's like, say for you, whether it's the synthetic company or the podcast, like you are driven from the passion you have and the mission that you have that you want to accomplish with doing those things. And to bring somebody in, it doesn't matter what the job is, they've got to believe in what that what your mission is and what your values are as a company and as a person, that helps with building it. And just listen to those things. It sounds like very simple concepts, and they are, but you feel like you need those reminders, because there'll be times like that I've contracted certain things out and I've been like, man, why is this not coming? It doesn't look like what I wanted it to be. And it's like, well, did I give the right direction, or was I too busy and just like thought it in my head and didn't clearly pass along that message? Or maybe there was a better way of me being able to portray it, or what my expectations were from it. And, it comes back to Jocko's extreme ownership on that side of it is like, typically, like, and you just said it a little bit ago, is when you look at things, typically if someone's not responding in the way you want, a lot of times it comes down to you.
Right.
And if they're a total shitbag, then it's time to get rid of them.
Yeah, I think you build value, and you say that 100 times and then say it 100 more times. Like, you got to build value for an employee to be there. There's got to be value for them, right? Like, the ROI's got to be there. Same for customer base and community. Like, why should these people support your company, buy your product? There's options in product spacing now. It's nuts. I can't believe ever that anybody has any money left over. It's so easy to buy stuff now, and there's so much product sales. I mean, just like scrolling and clicking and add to cart. I bought some red, white, and blue flip-flops last week. It was a total impulse buy, but they were Reef, and they have they have got an Eagle. They're red, white, and blue, and I'm like, yeah, I need those. And it's so easy. You're like, everything's just like add to cart, check out. I'm like, I am. There's you got to provide value to consumer through a lot of different metrics nowadays. To rightfully so, if you're going to earn their investment in your in your company. And it's one thing that we've been talking about for years, and it seems like it's just getting more important, is to like really, just kind of investigate who these companies are, where their finances go, what's the ownership model, where's your money actually going, and the opportunity exists nowadays to do the research to find that stuff out. And if you find out that companies support things that you support and have the same values, like, then they probably earn your money. And if they don't, then there's a million other options, So you got to be providing value from a lot of different angles, from self too, right? Like, what are you doing it for? There's got to be value in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It goes that way across the board, and and like another thing when it comes down to the value side of things and kind of transitioning a little bit, but you made a big move. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
This spring was 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, so we're I guess we're coming into like 2.5 years. April was 2 years. April. Man. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. April was 2 years. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. It was the biggest. I mean, I'm still facing challenges from it, if I'm being honest with you. It's a tough thing to do, to relocate, man. There's been some struggle. It has not all been rainbows and sunshines. I would not take it back for anything. I feel where I'm supposed to. I feel like this was never really the plan, but it just made sense, and I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. But it's been a legendary challenge, to relocate a family. But at the same point in time, the return on that investment that I've been getting is like, it's just crazy, man. Now I see where my kids are growing up versus where I grew up, which I had a great childhood and everything, but it got very developed. There wasn't spaces left, man. There wasn't woodlots to go play in. There's houses built on all the woodlots. We grew up with a couple acres of timber behind our house, and that's how we grew up. It kind of forged me into the person that wanted to go find more space to do that stuff, right? So it was like really critical. And the development happens, right? It's just like over decades, things change. And we were Metro Detroit. So we were on the outskirts, 45 minutes hour from a big city. And, things continue to scale out, especially with Detroit and a lot of big cities. They have crime problems. So people don't generally want to raise families. So they do their teens and 20s in the city. They get their college education. Maybe they have an internship and a job. Long story short, they don't buy houses in Detroit. They move out, and it's happened over decades. And so we wanted to be somewhere with a slower pace of life and kind of like live in the country, but also have the privileges of like being close to a city and a really good community. And so we looked at all of our options, and my wife and I had moved around quite a bit. Moving wasn't like a foreign concept to us, but after having kids, it's just a way different situation, right? So like we did it with the leading factor had to be, we're doing this because this is where we raise our kids, and we want to make sure we're doing everything that we feel possible to set them up for the path that we feel is, beneficial. And that's an individual household thing, 100%, right? So, but for what my wife and I wanted for our children, it didn't make sense to stay where we were. And we have all our family there, which is a crazy, it's a difficult thing to deal with. And then, grandparents and wow. Yeah. It's been a whole, I could write a book about it. So, and right when we moved to right before I moved, my grandfather passed away, which I grew up on a farm next to my parents. So it was like chaos, trying to figure out how everything's going to, because they still had he mowed, I think just over 80 acres of lawn. He was still mowing into his 90s. Yeah. It was a different breed of work ethic and whatnot. I mean, he had a nice woods mower, and true story, I walked out in the field one day and he was dead asleep on his lawnmower. He had the hydrostatic where you push the things forward, and he had fallen asleep sitting there, dude, taking a nap in the middle of the day on the lawnmower, things running wide open. It's hilarious. But he was still really doing a lot to keep the farm operational, from having Autumn Olive take everything over. And so, with him passing, it opened up a bunch of responsibilities there. And it kind of, put a sense of guilt on me, because I'm like, dude, I'm leaving. I can't, but I had to look at it this chapter of my life is over. This chapter is starting. We've made the decision. We got to make the most of it and take it on. And like I said, I finally feel, I'm 42. I'll be 42. Well, July 20th. So around sometime when this comes out, I'll turn 42. And I finally feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be, actually where I live and how I got exactly. I bought a house and everything. The way it worked out with the neighborhood and the neighbors having kids, our kids' ages and everything, I couldn't have drawn it up to be how it is set up now, from every aspect of it. So it's provided a lot of challenges, but I guess that's kind of right into that thing that we were talking about, is the doing that hard stuff pays back the big rewards,
Yeah, that's super difficult as far as moving and going one to a new place, even if it's a place that you really want to go, where you're at. It still comes with challenges that are associated with it. And it's funny. So I kind of the opposite, but I live where I grew up essentially. So right. There's a lot of familiarity with it, but at the same time as I've with my job now and being required to travel a lot, it's really difficult with not having a major airport within 2.5 hours of where I'm at, and just not things close by to, amenities right. to go to, which is super cool and super not cool at the same time, from the standpoint of just those, I do like those things. I do like good food, restaurants, things like that. And there are some, don't get me wrong. I'm not, completely shitting on all of them, but like it's just like there's not as much as you would find in other places or options. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I didn't realize what the value of being close to an airport. I mean, we're in Metro Detroit, so you know, you get to a big airport quickly, but that doesn't, being in a big area like that doesn't lend itself to you being able to hit a wilderness area after work and go hunting typically, right? And not have other people on top of you. But uniquely where I'm positioned right now, I could be to the airport in 20 minutes, and it would be a really nice 20-minute drive, like no traffic, really enjoyable. And we could get a lot of places that we needed to go, or we could get a layover somewhere and get wherever we needed to go. But then at the same point in time, I can come home on October 7th, start the truck up, and I could go see a piece of ground, drive basically any direction, an hour, and hunt wilderness for the most part, you know?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm super excited for you with that. And, you know, we've talked off air, you know, a lot throughout these last few years and stuff, and being able to see that's been cool. But, you know, I mean, I know you've always went up north, you know, hunting the big woods and stuff. You've been doing that for quite a while, but what is it like now that that is your option?
Well, Beau, let's get into my midlife crisis.
Let's do it.
So we started using Spartan Forge the beginning of the year. And in the past, I was hesitant because I'm like if it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm not a real tech person. Like, if I get an app that works for me, I usually don't switch it over just because I'm like not the most, I don't really want to relearn things, right? Unless I feel like it's really necessary. And so I started using pretty early on in the spring, as soon as the snow went out, actually. And I never, after using it for I hadn't used it in years, but after I used it the first day I went out, I never pulled any of my other mapping applications open because I'm going to move to this for a variety of reasons. And one, because it's easier, like it's more streamlined. There's like less clunkiness. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make the switch. And I like Bill Thompson. I've been very publicly open about that. One of the reasons that I decided to switch applications because I like the ownership of the company. I like the people that they work with. I like the people that they invest in. I trust them. I just like everything about the company. So that made it, it put a couple big things in line for me as how I purchase and look at things as a consumer, right? So long story short, midlife crisis, I was like, I really only have like a year and a half of data because I moved, and the whole starting over process was really fun. And so I made the decision. I was like, I'm not going to transfer my pins like from any of my other maps. I'm 41, going to be 42. And I think and look at the landscape so totally different than I did when I started using digital mapping, which was like, we got to be 8 years. I must have had all the other mapping applications on my phone up to the, maybe 7, 8 years ago. So it was like,
at least,
yeah, right. Getting on a decade worth of intel, putting into that thing. And I was like, nope, I'm good. Delete. I'm just going new. Like,
oh, you didn't even
transfer
didn't
anything.
even save them to reference.
I'm probably going
to
not find a couple but I got a lot of listen, this isn't a good characteristic, but this is a true one of me. I struggle to remember things like birthdays and times to be places and like important stuff. But I remember everything about where I was, when I was in the woods. I joke with my wife. I was like, we'd probably be further ahead. It would be good. It would be better if I was good at algebra, like not knowing where I put a camera in a swamp 4 years ago, but my brain's so full of that stuff. I need to like move to trash or something. So that was part of it, actually, is I looked at my body of work and I'm like, dude, I'm so differently than I did when I built all that information out, that I look at that now and I go, that was a chapter in my life, but I'm done with that. I'm moving on to a new one. And some of this stuff's just weight in my pack and it's holding me down. And let's look at a clean slate and revamp, retool, all that. So yeah, dude, my buddy Joe was like, you did what? Like, yeah. And in complete transparency, I didn't delete everything yet. I just haven't trained it and I don't have any intention. And I actually got a notification that one of my applications was like due for payment and I didn't pay it. So I'm not sure what's going on over there, but I let it kind of go that route.
I want to give you one piece of advice that I would give you on that, is I would at least export your files from those apps and save them on a computer just for whatever reason if you need to go back and find it. But similarly, when I switched over to Spartan Forge, it's been 4 years ago is when I was testing the beta version before it went to the public. And I'm a very, you know this about me, I'm a very data driven kind of guy. But I've had GPS, I had a Garmin GPS, I had a bunch of waypoints on. And then when I started using other mapping applications, I just had like everything covered, like so many waypoints, everything. I think I even transferred things from my GPS into Onyx at that time. And it was just like map was red everywhere. And I'm like, and Spartan Forge is actually super easy to transfer pins over, but I did the same thing you did, where I was like, you know what? I said, I can't even see the map anymore in a lot of these spots I hunt because there's so many scrape icons and things. I'm like, I need to start fresh. So I did the same thing of, now I still had that on my phone, like even the free versions of those, you can still see your old waypoints. So if I was like really lost, I'm like, man, I know there's something here that I'm looking for. I could go back and look, but I started with a clean slate because it made me feel so much better for it. And what's funny is through working with Spartan Forge and kind of knowing a little bit of the inner workings of it, talking like the number one reason that people don't transfer over to it, or even at trade shows when I've worked the boost for them, people say is like, man, I don't want, I mean, similarly to you of like, I don't want to learn something new. Right. And then I don't know what to do with my pins. And now it is really simple. Like even when you transfer pins over, it does bring the actual icon with it and all of the data other than the photos. So like you still can retain all of that information for the most part. And the other thing is relearning it, because it is so different to function with it. But I think it's one of those things you have to commit, because it is easier. It's just different. When it's like if you've used let's say you've used a PC computer your whole life and you go to a Mac and you're like, holy cow, like this is crazy. And now I've had a Mac for so long that like, me going back and using a PC is weird. Like, it's just like, what do you mean? Like, I have to go through all these folders and it's just like, it just takes that commitment side of it.
Yeah, it really does. I'm curious, I think people always want to compare, obviously, product to product. Like, I'm not going to in something that's of lower quality, but I wonder what the deciding factor for a lot of people, if like the quality of a thing is the same, but just like I said, the ownership thing for me is just, I like to know who's behind the company and who operates it. It could be as simple as being honest and being like, well, I just like their logo better. But people never do that. They always want to be like, they want to, it's got to outperform it by like every metric. But it could also be like, well, it's as good, but I just like it more for this other reason. And I just feel like people are not open to having that dialogue in any capacity for some reason.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's it's funny. I've learned like mapping apps are similar to like bows and stuff. You know, like if someone's shot a Matthews their whole life, or if they've shot a Hoyt their whole life, or they shot a Prime their whole life, or whatever it is, like to move to something different, it's like, whew.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, well, maybe you test it out. Maybe this one fits you a little better, or whatever it might be. But it's just like, that's like you're attacking their who they are as a person. If you're like, hey, maybe
hunting
you should.
Space. Yeah, the hunting space is really something. And I think by nature, hunting's tribal. So I think it's okay that like some of that, we're just like, like, hey, dude, my tribe's trying to get deer, and you're trying to get the deer, and only one of us is going to eat. So let's go. That's modern Facebook forums, you know, archery or bow versus crossbow.
Off of Facebook forums.
Yeah, I don't go on Facebook much. Yeah, I think just it's part of that. I think the DNA of hunting is a little tribal, and that's probably okay.
Yeah. Have you played around with the new imagery much yet?
Yeah, but I haven't had it in a lot of the areas that I hunt, so I'm like, I got my finger crossed on the update.
Yeah. So the new, just for anybody that's listening, at this time it'll be out for a little bit yet, but the new UAV update that's went across is 3 times the amount of area that is covered.
And my state's in there
with UAV. Yep. Yeah. Michigan is in there. Pennsylvania, like just a lot of areas that were remote, big woods didn't have that. UAV is mostly around city centers. Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Florida. So like a lot of whitetail states, and most of it is leaf off imagery, which is super cool. And you can go back in dates, and even if you want to look at summer imagery and stuff, they all come with, 3-4 years of historical data as well to be able to go look back at that. And like for people like us that are looking at, say, like logging cuts and stuff, that's super helpful to help with the age of those.
It's funny because you get used to looking at that quality of image, and then you quickly realize when you're out of it that you're at a disadvantage. Well, that's all the other mapping applications.
Yeah.
So just literally that one feature. But in some of the remote areas that I hunt, it hasn't been available. But some of the areas that I do hunt, it has been. So, for me, a lot. And I've been looking around down, in the areas where you guys hunt a little bit, because I'm, I've been trying for years to get down there, and I talked about this fall about it maybe happening. So I was kind of taking a look and laying some groundwork for some plans. And I, even though I'm in an area with a lot of hill and topography, we still have a lot of marshes and swamps and river bottoms. And when you get into those areas and you're looking at them digitally, sometimes it's hard to tell what's a tributary creek or little, like arteries coming into the vein, or are those deer trails, or is that a beaver trail? With that UAV, you can look at that stuff and be like, whereas without that imaging, you got to copy your pin and go to another application. A lot of times search through an application to find somewhere where they have the actual image that you need. Now you've spent 3-4 minutes or whatever going through that, and then you're going back on the other one. You're like, yeah, is that it? It's just so nice to have that right at your literally in the field at your fingertips, to be able to look at that and go, that's a deer run, like it's right up there, or that's a river. Just to be able to have that detail, to be able to see those features in a lot of marsh and swamp and river bottom, it's able to say it can save an time.
Have you messed around with Lidar much yet?
I have, but I definitely wouldn't be giving a TED talk on it. Yeah.
Okay. Once you spend more time with that, like I spend more time with LiDAR on that layer than I do just about anything else, because you can see all of that stuff. Even when you get in, like, I think it's actually really beneficial in flatter country, because you can see some of those raised spots that are so small.
Yeah, you can.
In minute to, they have 1 meter data in a lot of places, not everywhere, but where you can see a 3-foot deviation in the land. Like, that's freaking crazy.
LiDAR, literally within using it for 5 minutes, weirded me out, and I had to shut it off, because you literally start seeing all these shapes and things. You're like, what's that? Why is that there? Like, why is this perfect circular, like a meteor definitely hit there like 10,000 years ago or something, right? Why is that there? And yeah, it's just like you see the landscape through a totally different lens. And I started looking at that and just going, yeah, this is pretty wild. And at the same point in time, when I started running that, that's when they made that big discovery on the Egyptian tombs, and they were using LiDAR to, and I think other formats of ground penetrating radar, but I know primarily used LiDAR to make that discovery. And I was just like, man, what am I going to run into out here?
Yeah, that's the scary part about it, man. Like, but when you get in areas that have like logging roads and stuff, I was doing it in West Virginia so much of just like looking at areas that had logging roads, because it's such steep country. You look at the topo lines and it just looks like straight up and straight down from the bottom to the top. But you start putting on LiDAR, you can see these logging trails they're cutting through, and I look for where they're Xing, where they're making those crosses. I'm like, man, that's got to be a funnel of deer coming from the top of this ridge, coming down to the bottom, or working their way in the side hill. They can't really go anywhere else because like a cliff on either side. So it's just like looking at those sort of things was so helpful.
Do you know where I'm at with it? Is that I've spent some time looking at it, but how that ends up working out for me is that I look at it on a map and then I go out there and see it. And there's like an evolutionary phase of like, oh, I know exactly what I'm looking at the next time I look at this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
that's exactly.
I need to spend more time in the field with them. But yeah, it clears a lot up, right? It's just kind of like takes away a lot of noise.
Yeah. And I mean, it helps like from the standpoint of, as we just talked about, like, man, everybody's so busy in so many ways, and it can help you be more efficient, not in a way to make it easier from the standpoint of making hunting easier per se, but it can help make your scouting a little bit more efficient. You still got to check out the spots. You still got to be there in the field. You still got to learn the movements and the animals in those areas, but it helps you narrow down those particular locations to go check out. And I think that's super cool. I mean, that's kind of how I've looked at it.
One of the reasons why I was comfortable with going away from a lot of my map data is because a lot of it was built on landscapes not primarily targeting. Now, I've never hunted topography, hills and little mountains and stuff. And now where I am, I have a lot of that. And last year, that was one of my goals, was to kill a deer in hill country.
Mm-hmm.
And after even hunting that for 1-2 years now, I just love those landscapes. I love crawling up into those places in the morning and in the evening and stuff. I mean, it's really beautiful. Swamps and marshes hold a lot of deer, but they don't make too many landscape portraits over the mantle. They're not like, no, they're beautiful in their own right, but you get up into some beautiful, some beautiful high country, hill country, and it's just like, wow. And then, like you just said about features that move deer, dude, it's kind of like makes things, I think, easier, because there's a percentage of I'm not saying they won't use it, but it's a lot less likely, right? So it kind of makes more funnels, which I've always been a funnel hunter. Why wouldn't you take any advantage that you can more deer are going to come past this point, right? So, and it works for my method, my strategy real good, right? Because I like to deploy, and typically it'd be uncommon for me to not be hunting over or within proximity to a scrape. So those hill setups last year that I set up really were productive. Like, and I saw the value in hill country pretty quickly. And so I'm relearning a lot of, like I said, the first year here was all just kind of throwing stuff to the wall and see what worked. And then last year was kind of looking at what worked the year before, refining that. And I always use the analogy of taking 7,000 down to 700, down to 70, down to 7, and focusing on, that 7 acres. Because 700, realistically, there's millions of acres up here at my disposal. And sometimes I drive around and I literally start sweating. I get anxiety. I'm like, man, how do you even begin to decide where to be and when? But just break those big chunks down into smaller ones. And so, I started focusing in on that last year and had pretty good success. I filled, both my buck tags, which I haven't done in a long time. One with a bow and the other with a gun. And I did it. I had 2 things I wanted to do last year: is kill a deer in hill country and film my hunts. I've drug camera gear around for years, and I've been so bad about using it sometimes and not using it other times. I said I'm going to fully commit to it. Like, my goal, I'd rather... And I've gone back and forth with that too, because a year before I did that, and I know, it's the stuff people don't want to talk about, but I was goofing off with the camera when I should have been full attention to what I was doing hunting, and I shot high. I wounded an animal. He survived. I hit him high shoulder below the, in the whatever you call it, and maybe it wouldn't have worked out otherwise if I wasn't messing with the camera, but I was messing with the camera, and I was like, man, I really wish I wasn't doing that for a whole lot of reasons. But I just decided that I want to capture that. I really do. I don't know. I want to get to the comfort level where I'm doing that seamlessly, and it's not any different than anything else that you do when you're out deer hunting, I guess. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things, normal operation. And last year, for whatever reason, I kind of set my setups off of that. And I think also part of it too is like just getting older and getting more experience, just getting reps, right? Or just getting reps and getting kind of normalized to that. But I committed to it last year, and I knew I was going to have better trigger discipline. Like, if everything's not perfect, dude, I hate tracking deer now. Like, I get anxiety the second a deer gets out of my vision. I don't like it. It takes the fun out of it for me. So, like, if everything's not right, I pretty much got a good control over that. We're not going to stretch it. There's going to be other opportunities. Part of that's the way I set my life up now, right? I'm not on a 3-day weekend. I can go next week, settle down. This isn't going to be your only opportunity. You can come back in here, and I've got myself positioned to not have to force issues like that and be able to slow things down a little bit. And just like, once I did kind of realize that, and I think just by nature of kind of having a little better system and setup, dude, my bow kill and my gun kill are, I couldn't have done a better job, getting the deer in frame, getting them in focus, getting them coming in, getting them running off. Both deer came in. I killed them both, and neither one of them got 75 yards, And so I was like,
awesome.
That's what I wanted. like trophy class, age, size, everything aside. I didn't mention any of that. It wasn't, those weren't my goals going into this season. It was like, learn to film, get comfortable with it, and don't be involved with tracking a deer. It's like, if you hit them in the heart and lungs, they're like very unlikely that they're going to go over like 150 yards. There's going to be good blood. Anytime it goes outside of that scope with whitetails, it just turns into a pure goat rodeo. And my life isn't set up to be able to call into work the next day and go, and I don't know if that sounds like the right or wrong priority. Obviously, the last thing I want to do is wound an animal. But also at the same point in time is like, now I've got myself involved in a mess. And, you know, I want to be that lethal hunter out there and that's maybe part of the reason why I select equipment and stuff based on like, not if I make a mistake. It's like, no, this works better if you execute versus like you have an oops. Like, I'm never going to default to like the oops option because I'll just won't go, man. It stresses me out too much, you know. And I've been on a couple blood trails the last couple of years. A deer that other guy shot, you know, and it's like, it seemed like everything was perfect, and the deer doesn't get found, and they're extremely resilient, and it's crazy. So I kind of went long winded on that, but the hill country stuff has been fascinating to me, and there will be no going back. For me, only going forward hunting that kind of terrain.
Yeah. Dude, I got a few comments on that. So going back to early on what you had said, I've said it before and I believe it because I hunt like a variety of terrain. I don't always hunt big steep mountains. Like there's big wood stuff that I hunt that's relatively flat, and I've talked about that. I've done a few videos on it. I struggle more in those areas than I do in the steep country because for me, it's easier for me to hike into an area. I spend time making sure I'm in shape and I can hike into places. I'd rather hike and climb elevation, get into something, but find a funnel where that terrain has a better chance of funneling deer movement than where they can meander right one of 100 trails that's going through there. Yeah, there are things, don't get me wrong, there are things that can help funnel them down with vegetation edges and blowdowns and all this stuff, but there's so much more randomness to that flatter terrain. Now the hillside of it and the steeper terrain, usually the common challenge is the actual physical component for you as a hunter to go in there and hunt it day after day after day. I work really hard to make that to where that's not as big of a deal to me to do that. And I'm okay with doing that day after day to go in there. And I've found myself in places that were less steep in the last few years because I've chased some specific deer that were big, and it was just like, man, it's really caused me to do exactly what you said and take this large area. And this spring, I actually have one video coming out in the Mountain Buck Scouting video series that'll be coming out this summer of an area where I spent 6 hours scouting like a 40-acre area of the woods because like this was the place to be. I just needed to find the right places to be hanging in the tree. And I don't care how much I do it. I can't always go to a spot and be like, there it is. That's a tree I need to be in. Like sometimes it takes me sitting down, eating a snack, looking around, moving over there, sitting down, looking back, just try to like build these situations in my head. And it might take me hunting a few times to see what the deer are actually doing to then make an adjustment and move. And I think that once you can start to find those places, there's so much value in spending time and breaking that down. I'm actually reading, and I'm going to have him on a guest on the podcast here at some point this summer, but Bobby Worthington's book it's his recent one, Final Quest. Joe Miles had sent it to me, and super good book. And we were talking about funnels and finding funnels, and it's like, that's a lot of how I've grown up hunting was patience and finding those funnels and hunting them. And the more I've gained information and the more that I've done the podcast and I've done things had caused me back around 2019, 2020-ish to, or even 18 through 20, basically, to start jumping around more. Where in the recent years, I went back to what I was doing when I was younger and finding those good spots. And even though I might have 30 spots that I feel good about because I love to scout and I'm out in the woods a lot, but putting the time into those singular locations or those couple locations and just the boredom side of it, especially when hunting the rut, spending time in those locations and fine tuning those areas to the point of like, I know every stick that's in this stretch and how they're kind of moving through it and learning it. And that takes time and that takes experience of being in the woods. And every single year I'm learning more and more and more. And I love that. Like, dude, I love the fact that you will never get to the point where you know everything about an area or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's interesting too, the evolution of being mobile and moving and the openness to like how, when, like you said about sitting and observing, and then like maybe I need to make a little move. One of the well, I don't even know if I shared this information, but I killed both of my deer in the same spot last year. No one would know that from the film angle, but I actually killed them in the same structure, coming through the same piece of topography, right?
Really?
Yeah. But coming from different angles, so the way I filmed it and everything, you'd never know if I didn't say it. But I killed both deer in the exact same spot. And I scouted the spot in the spring and summer, and I put a camera up. And based on what I observed, I went in there and I pre-hung a stand so that I could be super sneaky getting into this spot. I have a bunch of old cast iron. Yeah, the big old cast iron, they were quote unquote mobile until like actually made mobile hunting equipment. If you've ever gone back to trying to mobile, it's funny because I moved that thing once and I was like, how did we hunt with this stuff? But that was what we had, but a pile of that stuff. Yeah. And it's still really because cast is awesome because it's so dense. It's quiet. It's like, I like big cast platforms for hunting. So if you can, we always talk about that. We like having morning spots set up for presets, So long story short, I had presets set in there. Like I was real confident where I needed to be. And after hunting it for I think I did 3 sits. So I sat a morning, an evening, and the next morning. And based off of those 3 sits, I was like, I need to move. Like I need to move north 70 yards. Like every has come through that pinch. And so I'm thinking about all my options. Like there's it all around and everything. Normally, I guess back in the day, I would just like sit there. I'd be like, duh, like the next, maybe tomorrow we'll get them. They'll come by, But now I'm looking and I'm like, no, but I need to move. So I moved that stand. I just got down after the morning hunt. I very quietly put it all down, went over, hung it, went home, did whatever, daily routine, and came back in there in the evening. And every deer I at night walked right by, none of them even did a single thing, It worked real good. The wind was coming down, and it's kind of like I'm facing north. So as you can imagine, this is like east to west. And I'm right on the edge of like, I don't know, a cliff because that's extreme, but a drop off. And so the deer funnel right on that bench, like the bench right there. The bench really squeezes down right there. And they all walk past it. And so I think a week went by, work and everything else. And that got us to November 1st. And I went in there and I snuck in there and I knew it was kind of late. But as soon as I got up there, I'm literally pulling my bow up, get my bow up in my lap, and I'm taking my quiver off, and I movement and look over, and at like 85 yards, I just see leaves, man, and this deer's just ripping the scrape up. And then I can see like this little tree going back and forth, he's just rubbing this tree up and down. I'm like, oh my God, there's a buck right there, So I got my camera all set up and everything, and we're getting all that stuff put together, and we're going to share it here probably at the end of the summer or going into hunting or whatever, but I grunted at him a few times and he didn't seem to pay much attention, be interested in. And then I ended up discovering, because he had a doe over, and I think it was a pretty young doe. Like, I didn't do a ton of looking at it when it came through, but they ended up being over there for 15, 20 minutes. And he was just like ripping stuff up, man, being super aggressive. It was really exciting. I filmed a lot of it. And then for whatever reason, he either got too pushy or something spooked her. She ran down and came right through, like right where I was sitting, and walked right. And I'm like, oh God, please. And that's exactly what he did. And my wind is blowing right at my face. Now he's coming from behind me up this down, and he, like, you could see it in the video, he like stops and he snaps his neck up, and he's like looking at me like, oh my God, no, he got my wind. Like, he's real close. He's just a couple degrees. Wind does, it's not just like a line, it's blowing this way and that way a little bit. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, when he snapped his neck up like that, my heart, because I thought he got a nose full of me. But no, he was just checking to look at her and see what she was doing and where she was going. And he drops his head down, walks about 5 more feet, and he just starts ripping up a scrape. And he does that, and he pulls his head up again, and he walks like another 10 foot closer, and he just starts ripping up a scrape. And I'm like, he's totally preoccupied. He's not paying attention to anything. Yeah. I'm like, this is it. But he was pretty much right behind me, and I'm sitting in a tree stand like this, so I've got to turn the camera, turn back and stand up and draw, back like this. But really, actually, once you make the initial movement and get situated like that, I was comfortable. And he was still ripping the scrape up, and I'm at full draw, and I peek at the camera screen, and I see he's like right in frame, right in focus. And I just started going through my shot and pulling into my back tension, and the arrow goes right through his front shoulder, and it just absolutely decimated him. It went right through the bulk of his front shoulder, right through his heart, and right out the offside, like never slowed down a foot per second. And he ran right at me, facing me. He was quartering to me, and he ran to that like cliff. Like, I thought he was going to jump off of it. But then he turned at the second, and I don't know if he caught, because I was moving with the camera. I think he made me caught my move, because he ran right to the base of my tree. But I grabbed the camera and I followed him the whole way. And then he ran out and he went down maybe like 50 yards. And then he went maybe another 10, and he just started doing this. And then he tipped right over and threw a little bit of leaves all over. And that was it. And I was like, I haven't been out here but 20 minutes. Like, I never even had time to process a single thought when I got in the stand. And he ended up being a real nice, 8.3.5-year-old deer. I was really happy with the way that it all worked out. And later in November, I killed one with a gun, and that was a really fun and exciting, hunt too, and kind of quite a bit different. It was what, I guess that's like Thanksgiving-ish time frame. It was the 25th. I think it was the 25th or 23rd of November. But he was just cruising in the morning, and he was going over a ridge. I saw him at like 100 yards, and I hit him with grunts, and he ignored me, and I did it louder and louder, and he got over the ridge and was going down into the bottom, and I just hammered on that grunt. And I see him stop and turn, and he just came right on the line, and I filmed him the whole way up. He just came and came and came, and he actually came too at a 30 scoped, and I shot him at like 15 yards. And, you know, I'm following him the whole time with the camera. And by the time he gets to, and of course, I pull my hand off the camera because he's coming through. It's now or never. But he's going to like walk like right under me. And so I didn't want that to happen. So I pull my hand off the camera and I pull the gun up. And as soon as I made that little bit of movement, he's like, what was that? And so he looks up, and as soon as he stops, of course, there's a sapling, you know, a couple-inch sapling right on his vitals. So I'm like, oh. So I just put it on his throat. I brought up his neck and kind of put it on his throat, and 15 yards, just totally dumped him. And again, you know, everything in frame and focus, and he thrashed a little bit and jumped up, and he ran out maybe like, he died almost exactly where that other deer died. So, you know, from that, and that's probably based off of what happened last year, that I'm like, man, I'm hunting hill country forever now. Like, this is I love this. And I set myself up to have a drag downhill the whole way out.
Those are the dream spots right there. So I'd like you to, well, first of all, what are you using, like, when you said camera, like in focus, are you using like a mirrorless or a DSLR camera where you have to focus? Or are you using like
I have a Canon, you know, handy cam. But, you know, you got to look at it, because I've had it before. Like, you put it in autofocus, they do a really good job. But you're in the woods, you know, and there's a stick like 5 yards in front of you, and it wants to grab that or something. So it's like, you got to look and see.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm asking selfishly because like I went back and forth. I have a Sony like handy cam that I've used for the last few years, and I can never get, it's not that I can't get them in focus. I can't get them in frame. So like, that's a whole nother. And so then I switched to last year. I filmed with my iPhone, did that, and then I wasn't super happy with like the quality was good on the phone, but when you put it into Premiere and stuff, it changed the colorings up, and it wasn't great. And then I was like, oh, do I go back to a DSLR or like my Sony, you know, A7 III or whatever camera that I'm going to be using? I'm like, then I got to really focus on like getting it in focus and doing those sort of things. So I always, like, from a self-filming perspective, I feel like the handy cams are the probably most economical, easier way to do it. It still does not make that easy at all. So don't take those words with the way I'm saying it, but it, out of the options I've used, either the handy cam or a cell phone are probably the easiest options to, as long as you get it in frame and there's not the sticks in the way, but you still got to look at the screen. There's that small screen. You're trying to see if things are in focus while you're trying to figure out how to execute the shot, which is hard enough on its own. That's difficult.
I guess the two things that have worked for me is a saddle's way easier than a tree stand, in my opinion. Because I set that camera, like, it's like in front of you, and it's more comfortable for me. I think personally for me, it's a lot easier for me to do filming out of a saddle. And then a good camera arm, there's so many of them out there. I can't even make a recommendation because I don't even know what all the total options are now, but I would say pick your camera arm based on how heavy of a camera, you know. That's the nice thing about the handy cams, right? They don't hardly weigh a thing. It's nice for carrying them around. They seem really durable too. I mean, I pull my shotgun mic off, and I just beanie hat and I throw it in my bag. And it's like, it's been living that life for like a decade.
I just toss it in there.
Yeah. Well, I don't even have a lens cover. So lens cover is a beanie hat. I put in a beanie hat and I just throw it in there, and but a camera arm that will support the weight of whatever you're using. But some of those camera arms, they're so noisy to set up and take down, and they're overbuilt for what you're doing. You know, you don't need a industry leading camera arm that'll hold a red if you're filming with and that's something that I had to figure out, right? So figuring out what camera arm for what kind of camera equipment you're utilizing. And then I think, you know, doing it out of a saddle, I've had quite a bit more success.
Yeah, so I've used what I currently use. We had made one at Timber Ninja for a while, carbon fiber camera arm. We're not making it anymore. Just honestly, just the cost of it versus how many we're selling just wasn't really worth it. But you know, once you got to heavier cameras, it started to have like the bouncing and stuff on it. But for the lighter cameras, the camcorders worked absolutely awesome. Loved it. I'll tell you one I've been impressed with that I saw just on a bear hunt up in Canada. Dan Infault's Beast Gear one. Like the guy that was filming me, Hunter, was using it, and he had it for a second angled down at me. It had a like a DSLR camera on it, and I also hung my bow off of it because we were sitting in a ladder stand, and it stayed steady. Like while I picked my bow off, it didn't spring up or do anything for how lightweight it was. And I got to give a lot of props on it. Like it was a pretty sweet looking product. And I mean, I didn't hear him setting it up, so it must have been pretty silent. I didn't look at the attachment method, but I'll never use one that has ratchet straps because like you start doing that. That's what my first one was. I had like this Hawk big camera arm thing, and it's just terrible. Like, and I realized like simplifying your setup for self-filming to the point where it's easy enough that you do it every time is what's going to get you to do it. To like, whether it's your camera arm, the way you pack it in your bag, all those things when you get in a tree to make it easy. And I do agree, like in a saddle, it's easier because like, at least the way I set it up is I get everything set up and I'm facing the tree on the right side, down around like my knee is kind of where I'd strap that to the tree, maybe a little above my knee. And that's where I have it on the right side. So I can easily see it. I can grab it, touch it. Super simple.
Yeah, I wish I remembered the name of the one that I have right now. I feel bad, but I honestly don't even think they're in business anymore. And that's why I said people would have to do their own research, because I know all the companies that have made leaps and bounds in mobile hunting have put camera arms out, and historically the options before that weren't really mobile hunting friendly. They were noisy, heavy, and it makes you just not want to do it. So
yeah, I did want to ask one last thing before we transition to some scrape stuff, but about that setup, you talked a little bit about it in those stories, but the setup where you shot both those bucks, like try to give the viewer, paint a picture of exactly what that place looked like and what drew you to setting up there.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to be vaguely honest about this. So I don't even disclose any longer if I shoot private or public. Hey, this is the deer I got. Because the second deer I shot, people had on camera. And now they're wondering, I'm getting messages, how'd you get anywhere near that deer? And so I'm just going to be, moving forward, I'm going to be so discreet. I'm not going to even say if I shoot my deer on private or public. With that said, that was a private land setup. Under 10 acres in the right spot. And I, like I do, talk to people. And I actually got that through work. It was a customer of mine. And I said, well, they had a garden. I could see they were taking like military operation defensive measures to keep deer out of the garden. And so I said, wow, it looks like you have a lot of deer around. And the wife, boy, I sure wish there was a few less. And I was like, okay. So after I got done with doing my job, I said, hey, if you're interested really in having a couple less deer, I really love to deer hunt. And I'd be very respectful of me and maybe my son that would come out here. And, you know, I observe that like there could be deer hunting, I'll fish or see if there's any chance I can get it in, you know. So I didn't really think too much of it at the time because, like I said, it's under 10 acres. It's not like, you know, it's not like it wasn't a giant piece. But I knew there was some deer around. I went in there, and the whole thing's basically up. Well, get to the back of it, and you get up there. Guess what? There is a big bench, like one of the nicest benches in the whole system. And it's on private, and that's got private this way and private that way and private that way. But it just happens to be the right spot. And you know, I had all these big plans for places to hunt and deer that I observed the year before. And then all of a sudden I'm on this, and it's like, I'm going to play the hot hand. And so this hot hand got rolling, and I was just like, this, you know, like, but I feel like that if you're willing to like talk to people and just ask questions, and you're not petrified of getting shot down, you know, you ask 100 times, just based on the law of percentages, you're going to get a few yeses. I know people say more and more now that that's less and less opportunity, and I could see that in like the destination places, you know, where people are paying money to go deer hunt. Love about Northern Michigan, nobody's paying money to come here. It's like one of my favorite things about it is that I don't have to. Yeah. I don't pull up to parking lots and have a bunch of out of state plates and things because it's just like we don't have big deer. So, but the spots that do have big deer, people are guarded about it. And like I said, local guys. I didn't post much about that second deer, but when I got it, after I got it, I posted some pictures of it because they had a huge body and a super goofy rack. It was only a 5-point. It was 3 on one side and 2 on the other side, and it was like its side was just all beam, like no points, but it was big, and people knew about the deer. So when I posted about it, you know, guys are like, how'd Mr. Public Land Hunter get anywhere near, you know, that deer's not traveling to, like, first of all, I own private. I own multiple pieces of private that I hunt. My family owns hunting property. I just spend a ton of time on public and love hunting, but I still hunt. I'm always going to default to playing the hot hand now. It's like I'm not basing where I'm going on who owns it. I'm basing on where I can go to feel like I have the highest percentage of likelihood that I can, you know, and that's the other thing. Check this box. Like I said, that it was all uphill in a hill system, and it just happened to have, you know, be around an area that's really all private. You know, there's some big farms, but then there's also some residential, and it worked out incredibly well. I believe that the way it played out, and now I'm like, man, I'm going to utilize this until, you know, the day they tell me that I can't or whatever. But so I had unique access. No one was hunting it. These people that live there don't hunt at all. They're like master gardeners, you know. That's the thought of going out and hunting in their backyard is what they would ever really consider. But I shared deer meat with them, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever. They love that I'm there and that I go out there and do it. And so, yeah, it's set up to give me unique access. And it's a topographic feature that when I went up there, I like observed there's a lot of deer around. There's a couple scrapes around. There's historic rubs, new rubs. It wasn't like blown away by the buck sign or sign in general. But just looking at the landscape, I was like, there's got to be a couple big deer. And then as soon as I got cameras going, I got a picture of 11 that I'll find the pictures and send them to you, but I sent them to a few people and I was like, how big's that deer? And they're like, probably 170. I'm like, oh, he's big 11.5 by 6. He's got to be 5 or 6 years old. So I was like, okay. I kind of thought that there might be a big deer in here, and there is a big deer in here. So instantly I was kind of, all right, I'm going to devote a bunch of time and energy to, and I felt real confident that I could, this spot, my buddy says sometimes you get these spots where you can lay on it. You know, it's like the opposite of what you hear, like the first sit and then it's done and you got to move. Like I hunted this spot. I'd probably hunted that spot like 8 times before I killed the first deer. And it was just from laying. I mean, you know, I can't hunt every day. I can't hunt all day. So I'm getting in there when I can and I'm picking my, and some of that's like the wind's right today. I can't go because I got commitments, right? So it was like things lining up. And when I would get the right weather conditions, I spot a lot after it rained or when it rained, because I knew the deer were bedding tight. They were bedding within 150 yards of where I was set up on some occasions, but 150 to 200. So I really liked rainy, windy days for sneaking in there because I could just sneak in there, and I felt like I was getting all these free plays. And I knew that there was a big deer in there. And then when the rut came around, when November came around, a couple transient bucks moved in there, you know, whatever. Maybe they were in there all along, but they were taking a path that didn't put them in front of a camera. And then you feel like, oh, these bucks weren't here. You know, the thing had been walking 5 foot behind the camera all year. You just weren't there. True story, funny thing about the first time I hunted. Remember I told you I sat morning, evening, and then the next morning. I had a camera set up there that I was feeling pretty confident that I would get pretty much every deer that came through. I saw 13 deer. I didn't get a single one on the camera.
I'd believe it, man. And, you know, so I need to make, and I've said this for people that are loyal listeners are probably like, Beau, I'm sick of you talking about this. But Kevin, you and I have talked about it a decent amount, the private public sort of deal. And like, I struggle with the displaying or like talking about the information that's associated with private versus public. And the way I've kind of come down to it at this point is if it's something where it increases my odds to the point of like it's not realistic to the average guy, then I will talk about that. Of like, for example, I've talked about, I went on 2 elk hunts last year. One was a DIY public land hunt. Another one was a ranch, like private land, super managed, awesome place to go to. I'm going to fully disclose that hunt of like, cause that's not realistic to someone listening. First time trying to go elk hunting. That's not what they should expect to encounter. So like I have a film coming out about it. It's like, very clearly disclose that that's different. Like that is not what everyone goes to. But the problem I have with like this whole like public private thing is just exactly what you said. People are like, oh, you're this big public land guy. And I've been labeled as that. Yeah, I hunt 99% of public land for whitetails because that's the hand that's been dealt to me. And that's what I just have access to a lot of public land. That's what I hunt. But man, I get an opportunity to hunt some private that I want to hunt. I'm going to hunt it. Like that to me does not, I don't know. I don't know if it's an ego thing or what, but like, I don't care what the land is when it comes down to it to hunt. And for most part, so I've got access, like I lease land in West Virginia. Okay. With other people. I've learned this last year, I got this lease that I had. Okay. Decent chunk of land, and there's other people hunt it, but there's also a lot of people that aren't supposed to be there that are there. And I was like, dude, this place has more pressure than the public land that I'm hunting in Pennsylvania. And it's like, there's not this, I don't know. It's just like a super weird dynamic when it comes down to it. And also like locally, like, okay, you just said locally, like you have to watch because there are people that are not rooting for you, Kevin, as much as you want, especially people that are like local in those areas, and they're like, I'm telling you, they're not rooting for you, unfortunately. And I have the same thing of like, I had one, so like out of all the bucks I'd shot in Pennsylvania, there's been one that has been shot on private ground that is a place that not, like there's a lot, I hunt a lot of private that's open to public, and there's like a lot of that timber company property and stuff here that I hunt. And there's a place that I've hunted, I've killed one buck that is private land that not everybody else can access. There's a lot of people that can access it, but it's like a hunt club where you got to pay to be on there. I've been on there for a lot of years. Don't hunt it very often because, in my opinion, it gets more hunting pressure, and there's more ATV and road hunters than there is like actual, people hunt. And I'm not saying people don't actually hunt it the right way, but there's a different amount of pressure that comes to it. Nonetheless, if I were to say that I shot a buck in Pennsylvania on private land, someone locally would automatically know where I was at, and that gives up that location and that opportunity to have good hunts there, hopefully in the future. And to me, it does not make the deer any harder. It doesn't make it any easier to kill on that specific piece of property. So to me, it doesn't make sense to talk about that as far, or like, in every post, or I don't care. Like for the most part, the podcast to me is like, these are like the good people that are listening to it. Social media has where you got the creeps that are in there that are just like looking out for you to try to find something that you're not doing correct. That's how I've looked at it, at least. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird dynamic, and I've went back and forth on that a lot. And like talking to you has been helpful with it. And because like my goal is like, I never want to have anybody think something. Like I want to be as honest as possible and transparent as possible, but I also got to protect the places that I'm hunting for myself and others, as far as like from exploiting the resource side of things.
100%. Yeah, that's, when you get a big platform, that can happen pretty quickly. We've seen some scenarios here in our home state where some big areas have gotten completely blown out because people go there and shoot deer, make a video about it or whatever, and post it. And it's just a thing that we got to learn to manage. Now, I'm people do a better job about it. We've been talking about it. And sometimes it's like my buddy Joe, he travels a lot to hunt, and we kind of done a thing where some stuff we don't even talk about what state it is. It's just like I went out of state and I got my buck. And he's like, yeah, I'm not trying to put the pressure on those on the residents and this and that. And I don't want heat on my spot and this and that. So we changed the way we converse about some of that stuff. The private versus public land thing, I'm over it personally. Like, I think that a lot of that just stems from a confidence issue at some level. Like, private land guys don't want to admit that there's some things there that are 100% easier, and it's like always this macho thing now to try to debate who's doing the harder thing. It's like, okay, maybe you did the harder thing. I did the more fun thing. So who won? You know what I mean? Dude, I had more fun than you. Like, that's my metric. I love public because I can roam, and if there's a bad set of circumstances, that's on me for choosing where, but I'm willing to accept that. Like, I know that variable's there, and it's not always fun, but it's kind of part of it. And that's like the extreme ownership Jocko stuff. It's like, if some dicky mo comes storming through my spot and I didn't observe that better stand 45 yards off where I'm hunting, and the guy's got an illegal bait pile in here, and that's why I'm seeing a pile of deer coming through, that's on me. And, sometimes it's hard to look in the mirror and just go, hey, that's on you, So, but I'm now that I own my own land and have hunted my own land, and I still spend majority of my time on public. I say they're both their own flexes. Like having a piece of private costs money and it's an investment. It takes a lot of work and effort to get a piece of private. If you private, it's in a piece of private, and then you get some privileges off of that. Public's a flex because it's tough. You're saying I'm willing to accept these variables that are sometimes going to be out of my control. But I feel like it's part of me is like being a platform where everybody listens is like, we're people. We're going to be streets. And if everybody else is hunting on public, we're going to do some hunting on public too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's one of those things like for me, I just want people to hunt whatever the heck they want to hunt and go do it. So you brought up a little bit ago about the states and like mentioning states. So this has been a dilemma that I've been thinking about for a while. So like, it's easy to, to say exactly what you said. And I've heard you guys talk about it and it's made me think about it from a way of like, okay, not mentioning states. And maybe this comes down to still mentioning regions, because like the biggest thing, like from being what I would consider mostly an educational platform for myself is like, I want something so people can understand like what's relatable to them. If I were to be hunting something that's an area that's totally non-relatable, or talking to a guest or like showing a video, then they might pick up on something that's completely not relatable to the type of area that they're hunting.
Right.
And that's where my biggest like thing is. I don't really care to like, there's no personal reason for me to be like, oh, I'm hunting West Virginia, or I'm hunting Pennsylvania or New York or whatever, wherever I might be at. But like, that's the main thing that I have with it. Now I have like, as far as regions in a state, I don't think that needs to be as disclosed or anything. It's like, okay, I'm hunting hill country, I'm hunting mountains, I'm hunting big woods in X state, or in this region, the Appalachian region, or whatever it might be. Maybe that's the way to technically go about it. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I've thought about it very hard, and I'm still thinking about it to try to like figure out what's the right way to describe that without hurting those resources that are specifically there. Like I always think about when it comes to like West Virginia, for example, that's a state that is so steep and so rugged in the places that I'm hunting that there are very few people that are actually going to do it more than one time of going there. And I say that because it's true. Like it sucks a lot of times. Like it's really difficult. And like, we could talk about Michigan and Pennsylvania because it's not technically a destination place for people to go to most of the time. You start getting into the Ohio's and you start getting into some of these other states. It's like Indiana's places like, okay, maybe people are going to be wanting to go there more and need to be covered. I don't know. But at the same time, I truly believe that more states are growing bigger deer across the board, and they're able to be found.
Agree.
That I'm not as worried about going to a specific place. Yeah, you go to an Iowa, you expect to see more mature bucks, or maybe their deer even of a 3 and 4 year old class or better antler size than you're going to find in Michigan and Pennsylvania. But I think you can find big deer just about anywhere now. And I don't know, maybe I'm completely false with that. I haven't been to every place, but like I just see it from like the Mountain Buck Monday submissions I get sent in from just places I would not expect. It's just like, dude, those are huge deer. It's just like all of the states. Right. and it's wild to me.
Yeah. People just have to have a grasp on what the reality of the area that they're hunting, you go to Iowa or Kansas, the 200 class to 170 is like probably 170 to 150 in Michigan. There's like barely any of them, right? Over there, 150 to 130, there's a lot of those deer. Well, in Michigan, that's like 115 to 125. Sorry. And how, for me, most people leave me right out of the conversation because it's never the big metric of how I value my hunts. But I always want to feel like I'm in the game on, like, I always say I default to, I'm trying to hunt a deer that's above average quality for the area, right? That's how I run my race. I just want to be above the 50%, and I want to be like above average, I want to be doing that by my marker. And I care honestly more about the landscape and the weather and just like how I set my hunts up into like what I want to get out of it. The big animal it's a bit, but it's not the defining. And because of that, I feel like I'm a little bit more focused about a lot of that stuff than I see a lot of people. But I fully agree with you that there's changed. People are more interested in bigger deer. They understand that laying off the medium to small ones is going to provide that opportunity. And a lot of it, I think, is just happening, one, because, some rules and regulations, but also it's just culture. People see what's possible. They're like, I can have a little more patience. And unilaterally, if the guy's hunting over, a lot and he's got a little more patience, and it's just interesting to see. But I think in a land of doom and gloom, which is the internet, when you go on there and we've been talking about a lot, is like, dude, we're so spoiled right now with like tail deer hunting. It's like you said, I feel like you pretty much kind of go to any state. Some take money and draw and this and that, but you can find big deer just about everywhere. And you just have to set your expectations, right? You're probably not going to go to Michigan, PA, Wisconsin and shoot 170 deer on a 1 week trip. But you very well might go shoot a 125. So, like,
hell yeah.
Yeah. And I always look at it as fishing too. It's like, tell a guy that loves catching panfish that because they're little, they're stupid and they don't matter. He doesn't care. Like, the guy's out there catching 50-inch muskie, and that's what he does, and that's what he loves. And he looks over at this guy catching panfish, and he's like, well, that's stupid. Like, look how little it is. But try to tell a guy that loves panfishing that it's not as good as muskie fishing because the fish aren't as big. It's like just doing a little bit of a different thing. He's obviously happy with it, or he'd be out muskie fishing. So
yeah, dude, that's a great analogy. I like that one a lot.
People are so just, I don't know what it is. The internet definitely fuels it, but people feel like they got to keep up with the Joneses, and you see what's possible. I mean, dude, if I had that complex, I don't think I could work in the space, because I would I would be so intimidated that, like, if that was my goal and I got these Seek One guys running around that what in the world? Andy May, like, you name it.
Yeah, you can't compare yourself to others when it comes to that. Like, I don't know. I guess it is, like, for me, when I look at it, I think everyone just got to look at it. Comes down to what their goals are. And it's like, if something doesn't make you excited, don't shoot it just in the reason just to fill a tag. But if you want meat and it gets you excited, like, what the heck? Like, I'm not going to judge anybody on that. And I think, and even from the standpoint of, like, having goals of, like, going to a different type of area, like, dude, you put me in like, say a swamp, like a marsh type area, you hunted something I don't have a lot of experience in, I'd be more than pumped to shoot a buck in those places, something that like to go in on a week-long trip. Or if I got in there and I wasn't excited and I saw it coming in, and be like, I'm cool with just learning and going home and being like, all right, next time I've learned something. If I enjoyed it enough, I want to come back and try it again, then try it again.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I've been saying for a while, like, people to focus a little more on, like, what is a good hunter, and I think it's somebody that's, they got their personal life in check, their responsibilities in check, they're not foregoing, like, things that should be prioritized and more important. And then also it was, like, guys that are just, like, lethal killers and go out there and, for me personally, I take a lot more pride now in really making that perfect shot and not being involved on a blood trails, because, like, this is my objective. This is how I'm setting my objectives up. If that happens on a 150-inch deer, I'll be thrilled and ecstatic. But I think about this all the time, is like, if I got a 150 and I gut shot it and it's this epic road, it's just like, it's a real bad situation. And I don't know, would I be more proud of that stuff? I've shot plenty of deer in the guts. Like, I'm not, but this is where I'm at personally, is like, that is a big part of my success metric, is that I go out there and I shoot that deer through the shoulder, through the vitals, and that thing doesn't make it out of my sight. And if it does, I hear it crash. Like, that's almost like what I'm chasing now, is like that crash, or seeing him go down in front of me. And that's like one of my metrics for success. It's not really driven by the size of the animal. And I think that's just, I really honestly do think that's, I didn't feel that way when I was 25, but I'm 42 now.
Mm-hmm.
My days of trying to, or being concerned at any level about impressing people other than my wife and kids, is like, it's so funny how, like, I do think with age, and some people are better at it, like at a younger age than others. It's like a maturity thing more than maybe an age thing. That's probably a better way to say it. But I've matured a bit to where it's like, I don't. Yeah. And Jared Scheffler reminded me, I had him on a few weeks ago, and he reminded me of like how much of a person ever hunting is. And anytime you look past or outside that, and you start to base your hunt off of what other people are doing, that it's just going to be a downhill thing for you. I was like, yeah, it's what do you want out of it, personally? So, but I don't hear big buck picture, what people like and click. And so maybe culturally we're not 100% there, but the guys that are like really lethal killers, I feel like they deserve like some extra props, and people don't really talk enough about it, to the fact to where like we build equipment defaulting to like, we all make mistakes, or this might not go good, so you better have this, you better be set up in case things go bad, versus like, hey, do everything humanly possible to make sure things go good,
Yeah, and I do not mean to go down another rabbit hole, but on that point, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because something I've dealt with recently is like, in years past, like, I'm a decent shot when it comes down to it in the case, but I'm not going to sit here and claim, like, anybody that's listening to this can go out. In the last 7 years since I've been doing things publicly, you can see every one of my mistakes, every one of my, feeling like I'm on top of the world, and everything in between. And I went back and forth on like, all right, there's the aspect of, all right, when I look at deer hunting, do I just need to make it where it's like I could shoot this thing behind the back because I'm so close, and focus on that part of it, or focusing on those weaknesses of being able to make that 37-yard shot when he goes out a little bit further and you want under pressure, be able to do it. It's like, there's, like I said, I've had super good moments that I could talk to you about and be like, dude, I'm the best in the world here, man. Like everything felt good, execute the shot. And then I've completely airballed things where I'm like, what happened there? And I've went through this in my mind of like, cause like there's this part of me that's like, all right, shot opportunities has not been a problem on most hunts I've been on in recent years. And I'm like, that's great. Like scouting, things like that, been on point. The execution part has not been on point on all of them, which is what my goal would be. And that's what like the real killers out there are doing. And it's like, a buddy of mine was talking, we were ice fishing actually this winter, and he was telling me, he's like, man, he said, I read a study. I don't know, I haven't looked into it, but he said that he's read a study where you focus on your strengths and getting better at your strengths, which would be is like getting close to deer and having those opportunities, but maybe closing that distance so that they are. And I think I've heard Cody DeQuisto maybe even talk about that before, versus focusing on those weaknesses and say, for example, in this example, extending that range out a little bit to be lethal at 40 yards and or whatever that might be.
I can believe that.
And yeah, so like, what are your thoughts?
Well,
on that?
One, I noticed my camera light's fading out pretty bad. Do you want me to turn my lights on in here?
Yeah. If you have them, that might be a little better.
Give me a second. Hold
You're
on.
looking like a
I can't even see myself anymore. No, I laughed a little bit. I've known Cody for a long time. I like Cody, but my buddy shot bows with him, and he said, I know why Cody says he tries to get him close, because I never seen somebody shoot a bow so bad. Had to chuckle a little bit. Archery's not for everybody. It's tough. That's why I always tell my buddies, like, I'm not 100% against crossbows, because I've hunted with some guys that just, I was like, I know they're gonna fling arrows at deer. I'd rather, in the defense, I'd rather just have them take a crossbow and get the thing over with versus, I just chuckled at that a little bit. One of the reasons that I default to hunting over scrapes is because you can set them up at a known yardage, right? So it's like, you know that's 20 yards or 25. I love 25 yards. I feel like that angle's a little better. I feel like they're not right on top of you. I just love like 25 yards. That's where I kind of ideally, if I can shoot a deer from elevated position, I want them at 25 yards. So I'll always get as close to that, whether it's 20 or 26 or 27 yards. I try to be right in that window. And then whether it's a scrape that I'm just setting up on or a scrape that I'm building, I love the fact that I know exactly what distance that is, and that it's like my goal and my is to get the deer to stand right there and shoot it. And they're messing with the scrape, so they're like semi-distracted. They're really distracted. The deer I shot this year was ridiculous. It's just like, it was a free play. He was making so much noise, and he had no clue that I was there. So it's one of the reasons why I've really gravitated to being a part of, or my primary method, is that I know that the deer is going to be preoccupied momentarily. It's not walking through. I mean, stuff happens all the time, right? But in an ideal world, deer's going to walk right up to here, the way that I set this happen, and it's going to stop here for me based on what I did and how I set up, and it's going to be distracted momentarily. And I've had really good luck with when that happens. My deer, I make good shots, and my deer don't go far. And outside of that, I have all the stories that everybody else has, about going the wrong way, being involved in goat rodeos. So and I say this often, scent products now, one of the primary marketing things is like the big buck, right? It's like the big buck. But there's a ton of people out there that are hunting that aren't just hunting for a big buck. Like, what about them? Like, what about a product value for them? Like, what about me when I want to go out and shoot 4 does? I want to be able to up and have walk right to it and stand there, and that's my trap. Like I said off to go back to like a trapper's perspective. You're going to get this and step in this 2 square foot of bare dirt. That's like your Econo bear trap. But instead of the trap closing mechanically, you're shooting an arrow or a bullet through them, and I started looking at that and setting all my setups like that. Just have had good, consistent success and less deer wounded and getting away. And, we can't bait here, and you guys can't bait in PA. And that's something that we could talk about, because you asked me about legality, about my product specifically, and it had me go down kind of a rabbit hole about everybody's products and what's legal where, and synthetic versus organic, and all the details in there, because there's a lot of nuance in the conversations. But the thing I always liked about bait is especially for people that don't have a lot of experience hunting or are younger hunters, is like known and a deer that's not on the move. It's going to stand there pretty for you for a minute and give you a really good opportunity. And based off of that, then it's up to you to not mess up. If you got a deer standing at known yardage and it's not moving, hey, now it's on you. Everything else is on you, right?
Yeah. No, I completely understand that aspect of it. So, like, to dive into that baiting side of it, and I apologize, Kevin, we went on some rabbit holes that I think are super good. So if you need to break off, you tell me.
No, I'm okay. I'm on call for work tonight, but the phone's been quiet and I got good battery life. So yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Well, I wanted to talk about, the scrape thing. So obviously, again, you have, a product or products that are for building scrapes, making scrapes a little bit better, from a licking branch to the ground to, 3-part system that you talked about there with DH3, now Deer Hunter Synthetics. And I had questioned you on, as I think as every hunter should, but even like more so with myself, of doing things that are publicly facing, like I really got to be careful on like what is checking things out. And I'm like, is this product legal to be able to use synthetic product that you spray on that licking branch? And so talk a little bit about that specifically, and how to look at that.
So I think 2 things to understand right off the get is the definition of synthetic, which let's do this because every state has their own guidelines. So I'll leave that for interpretation to the audience, but we'll do PA because you're Pennsylvania and you sent me this. Let's read what Pennsylvania has posted. It's for legality. Lures and scents. Non-food source lures and cover scents are legal for deer. However, cervid, urine-based attractants are not permitted in CWD disease management area DMAs. Just roughly off your head, how much area is that? Is that a lot or like a little? That seems like something that changes.
Yeah, that changes. I don't even know what the percentage that would be that are CWD areas.
So based off of that right there, I'm already, if I can default to synthetic and having to worry about any and all of that. For me personally, that's why I did a long time ago. That's all right. We're not quite there yet. So it says scents and lures that contain any form of natural or artificial foodstuff, including but not limited to corn, apples, and acorns, are not legal. Use of drip devices legal, as well as electronically heated scent or lure dispenser with legal scents and lures in electronic devices that distribute ozone gas for scent control purposes are legal. The use of scents or lures while hunting bears is permitted. So hard stop on bears. The food thing you asked me about before, because you said maybe somebody was razzing you up a little bit about nose jammer. Cervid stuff's easy for me. I'm going to go synthetic every time on urine because you get a more consistent product, you get a lower price point, and maybe it's because I grew up with animal, but I'm not into factory farming. I don't care what the animal is. And especially deer, they're like wild, and I think they should be wild. And every time I see deer and but that's just me. So if I can avoid that, I will. Nothing bums me out more than deer tag in it behind a fence. I'm like, that poor deer wants to do is be wild. So I love that synthetics gets me kind of around all. There's a lot that you can go into there with that, but the food stuff is interesting, and that is very open to a lot of interpretation. I think you would have a very hard time, like if someone actually cited you a citation. Well, if it says like apple lick, like I would avoid I would avoid using anything that has the words in it that they specifically say legal. So if it's like acorn magic or corn dust or apple lick or whatever, I would shy away from those products. Pretty clear the way that they have that written, that you're using a food based.
It probably also has salt, and it also has salt, food, and everything probably ingrained in those products.
And the fact that you said that is kind of where a lot of this hinges. To think about that, because our product use some of the ingredients to potentially make food. Yeah, you wouldn't eat the ingredients on their own, but they smell good. So I started thinking, I was like, well, what smells good that you don't eat? And I was like, well, perfume, like a girl that puts on like nice body lotion or something, like that smells good as hell. I'm into that.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't walk over and take a bite out of them, you know? It's just like, it's a pleasant aroma that is essentially an attractant, but it's not necessarily food. But could you...
And would it also come down to like something that is naturally occurring like in the deer woods, for say like apples? Obviously apples naturally occur versus another smell that might smell good to us, but is not something a deer would smell on a normal basis. Does that constitute this is where
like something that some crazy guy in northern Michigan's mixing up in buckets in his garage and has stainless steel hoppers of things that are mixing for 72 hours and then have to be filtered. Here's on our, and I can only speak on our products specifically, is that active ingredient isn't that. Like our active ingredient is our gland mixture. So that sweet, pleasant overtone, while it's an attractant, it's really not a food. We literally list on the ingredients that's like the inactive matter. You know, like if you buy bug spray or whatever, anything, it's like 90% inactive ingredient, like percentage active ingredient. Our low percentage active ingredient is the gland that's in there. And that actually has to go in with it's like a procedure, but it takes about 72 hours for that gland to evolve into, I think would probably be the word, or mix to the other parts, and then solids have to be filtered out of that, and then it ends up going into bottles. So it's really not a food based lure. And I'm talking specifically about our brand, our urines. So our urine, our active scrape compound, the two things that go into the dirt, are very clearly legal in Pennsylvania. No, not even open to interpretation. They're not cervid based and they're not food based. The branch catalyst has a sweet overtone. It smells good, but so does perfume, but it's not food. So could someone mess with you on that and give you a hard time? I really to see a situation where that, like, and I'm just looking at it, kind of trying to look at it through the legal lens of like, okay,
Yep.
if EO says, hey, he was using that, like, and they actually took it to court and I had to testify in this, I don't think legal product to use. The active ingredient is our gland mixture that is in there, and it's an undertone, and some people pick up on people smell differently, you know. Some people pick up on it right away, and people don't pick up on it. Some people pick up on the sweet smell, and some people, I say it's got a sweet tone and a musty tone, and that musty undertone, that is what makes the deer go bananas and makes them like have to interact, not have to. It's what really is the prominent factor in them choosing, I think, to act with that versus the sweet overtone. But the end mixture is a very small part, and it essentially needs a carrier, if that makes sense.
I gotcha. No, it's just, yeah. Again, like, there's so many different things that I could question or go down that rabbit hole based on the description that's there. And what I need to do is even talk to some of the officers that I know in the space about those different things. And it is not like, and this is me freaking pulling hairs at looking at specific things. This is not dumping buck jam on a licking branch,
right?
You know,
exactly.
Per se, this is not that at all.
Yeah, and you're not trying to, and that's actually not. So, at a moral level, okay, we talked about the legal thing, moral level, the integrity part of it. That's not what we're not trying to fool these deer that there's food over here. We're trying to encourage them to interact with this scrape. And that's why we call it catalyst. That's why we call the branch catalyst, because it just accelerates an already natural behavior. If you would add a catalyst to something, speeds up the process or increases the frequency. So,
yep.
When I look here in the dictionary, just when you put in synthetic, made by chemical synthesis, especially to imitate a natural product, logic, noun, a synthetic material or chemical, especially a textile or fiber. And I think synthetics and chemical, think of like harsh, lab created, but literally water is a chemical. So when you define chemical, sorry, I should have had these written down, but it's important that people understand the difference between organic scents and synthetic scents. What's the range of is that it could actually be, right? I never hear this about, but I kind of geek out on it now, right? So chemical relating to chemistry or the interaction of substances as studied in chemistry. Noun, a compound or substance that has been purified or prepared actually artificially. So it can be made the exact same way over and over again, and you eliminate outside variables, right? So I can't, without sounding negative about traditional products, it's hard to get too descriptive about why I defaulted to and why I prefer synthetics, but I know what I'm getting every time. It's going to be the same thing. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and people can do their own research, all the different ways that scents are, but they're super effective. And I'll take it back to defaulting about what I talked about in the front end. It's like, it's a fun way to try different things, see what works. That's what I did for decades, and it's what sent me down the path of starting. It started by back engineering other companies were doing in the space. Essentially, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. But the thing that I was tired of was you'd have maybe 8 out of 10 interactions are good and positive, but you'd have 1 or 2 that a deer smells that, and you could tell they're like, it has a negative impact on them, and that usually be the older age class bucks. They're like, they smell something different that they're not used to, and it just flips switch to be like, no, I'm not cool with that. How'd that get there? What is that? Younger deer, they're a lot easier to manipulate. But you get those older deer, and I ran high quality video trail cameras for a long time and watch how these interact with this stuff, and I'm like, man, how am I doing myself a favor here when I see that kind of interaction from a deer that I'm hunting or trying to get? Like, he was clearly concerned. And so that's kind of what sent me, that's what sent me into the headspace of like, can we do something different here that's a little bit more natural to these deer and trade it and figure out how to minimize these negative interactions, especially with these older age class deer. And it took a couple tries on a couple different things, but once we got the gland mixture right and then figured out how to get that to a carrier, and then how to there's a whole process about like filtering, getting the solids out of it so that it can actually. The other thing is like, 1, how do you apply it? And then 2, like, how do you put it into any scalable thing where you can produce it and bottle it, and it's like, it's a product that people can actually use because it functions correctly. It doesn't plug up the second you go to try to go out there and use it, and it ends up with, and there's still issues and work to be done there, but we've made just a ton of improvements based on what else is out there, application methods, simple use. We tried to develop a system versus just a product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you're in a tough space from the standpoint of there's not at least for me, there's not a ton of trust when it comes to scents, because I've seen so much of that smoke and mirrors type of marketing, and everything attracts this and does that. And there's like so many companies out there that are doing things that aren't really doing what they're claiming to do. and are literally just marketing companies when it comes down to it, and typically poorly marketing companies. But like that's like where I'm always super, I guess, weary of that. You know, I'm a person that the majority of my hunting is in and around scrapes. Like that's how I've learned to hunt and how I've done that. And I've used a ton of different, you know, to use your term, branch catalysts in the past. I've used a lot of different things, and just like I've always just wondered, and I've seen a lot of things that I think are just complete BS, and then some things that I think that, you know, can work, and I've seen things that work really well, and try to understand like where that comes from, and understand it. And I've really appreciated the level of research and like passion that you've had with it, and went through it and looked at it from that perspective. So that's yeah. And the fact that you've taken that time when I've sent you that question, you know, years ago or a year ago or whatever it was, I don't remember the exact timeline of it initially, and you've done your research and looked through it and done it, and trying to make that product specifically in a way that is attractive to the deer, but not technically an attractant, under quotes, of like a food-based product that's coming through per the definition of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. I don't know how anybody else describes it, but from what I'm familiar with, it's super interesting to me, and I think it's cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A couple things. One, so there's not been transparency in this space as far as what these products are. But I will tell people this. A lot of these companies turn the bottle over, look at the label, and find the patent, and go the patents. You can look them up and see a lot of like, oh, okay, like we'll never our product because we're not going to tell anybody what we're doing. It would be death to us. Like, I burn my trash. Like, I'm concerned about people going through my trash and figuring some of this stuff out. Halfway joking. But a lot of these companies, they rush to patenting these processes. A lot of it's a process, but if you really want to know, for somebody who really wants to know, look on the, see if it has a patent, and then go look up that patent and see what the process of what they're doing. And then a lot of times you can be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was at all, right? So that's one thing. And then two is, the other is typically going to their experience with the product. So I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Like, go and don't just buy our product and not try other things. Deer are very individual. That's why we have worked to, you know, when we put our first product out, I was like, this is all anybody's ever going to need. But people like options, and deer also, down to regional and down to individual personality. One deer is just whatever. They'll like something more than another, you know, it's just like people. So, but based off of what happens, it's like my buddy that worked on this a little bit with me, he's like, you know, someone goes out and puts out, you know, Uncle Dave's magic buck piss. And, you know, halfway hungover from the night before, but he's got his bottle of Uncle Dave's magic buck piss, and he goes out there and he pours it on a stump, and then he goes and sits back down, and 25 minutes later, the biggest deer ever seen comes running in and runs right over by that stump, and he dumps it. And he's like, oh my God. Well, literally didn't know that deer was bedded 200 yards away. Coyote just jumped it up off of its bed, and the thing ran over there because a coyote jumped it up off. But that guy is a customer forever. And some of that's just gonna happen, you know? but we have enough customer testimonials now that are like on our website, credible people like Tony Peterson. You know, Tony came on the podcast. He bird hunted a property, had a dog and kids running all over the property. They hadn't seen deer on the property for like hardly a week. He went out there, made a mock scrape. At the end of the day, sprayed it all down, and he had like 4 bucks on it that night they'd never seen. And he's like, okay, what's going on here? You know, he called me and he's like, well, I got a good story for you. And I was like, cool. Just like anything else, you know, do you want it to be part of your method? Does it work for you? If not, you know, try different things, but based off of their interaction is and experiences with the product. And that's why we've always said our product is like a 3-part system. That's how it started off, as DH3. The first part, education around the animal, and you're not trying to make them do things that they don't want to do. You're not making them come to a specific spot based off of this thing is so crazy it's going to drive them wild and they're going to do something reckless and stupid. The first part is like, you got to top of them and understand to put this where they already want to shop. You got to put it right in their face, right? So the education part is the first and foremost. And if you default to that every time, you're just bound to success. Honestly, you know, so
it's not like putting a trophy rock 40 yards off a trail in the middle of nowhere in this wide open spot, and all of a sudden these deer are coming to it. Like when building these mock scrapes or enhancing existing scrapes, they've got to be in the spots that they want to be to begin with, and that just helps the impact of them being able to work that scrape maybe more regularly, or stopping and checking it out versus, you know, skirting past it. Is that what you're saying?
And like, you don't want to, I always say getting crimes in the whitetail woods. Like, you don't want to leave your fingerprints on anything. Like, you got to be, one of our tags for the company is be surgical. Like, don't just have a system. Don't be sloppy. You're also, I always is like real estate, like location. Like, make great is like real estate. Location's not good. It's all for garbage. So always default to location. Because yeah, typically, especially if you're going to target like an older age class deer, you're not do much to manipulate them to change their course even 5 yards. I mean, they have a spot that they want to be and walk, and you're going to have a lot better success if you set your foundation up like that. You know, they like cover, they like security, like a good scrape right on the edge of a bedding area. You're laying in there, and they feel pretty confident that they could hear anybody come in and out of there all day, enough to where you're just out of visibility and you could sneak in there and be quiet. But that deer feels comfortable to where if anybody had come in, would have heard them, you know. But you snuck in there, and because of that piece of real estate, because that location was so good, the deer thinks it's got everything to its advantage. You know, he's not gonna typically recklessly go 250 yards, because he's even a mature. Maybe it's different in complete wilderness. Like, they will smell a doe and turn 90 degrees. I've seen it tracking. Like, what the hell? This deer is just going north, and all of a sudden, boom, the thing turns 90 degrees and picks up the pace and goes off, and then you get up 100 yards, and was 3 does bedded there that he jumped up, and he smelled them. So I'm not saying that can't happen. That's one of the reasons why I think, like, the branch caddis particularly is an effective product, is because you do get it up in the air, and whereas like ground-based products, they're not going to travel quite as much, you know. But that's why the combination of both of them is the absolute best, because you make this real situation. The branch catalyst is like turning the neon on at the bar. It's like, there's a bar here, and so somebody that's like, I could really use a drink, they might go into the bar. Otherwise, they might not have, if you didn't have a big, bright open sign on, they might come over there. But then they get over there and it's like, is the bar any good? Smell what's in there and everything. And I just think for the older age class deer, especially the ones that are getting pressured and hunted, that details absolutely matter.
So one last question, and then I'm going to pee my pants, so I'm going to have to go here shortly. But when it comes to, like, say, let's talk specifically, I understand what the ground, and I think anybody can understand what the 2-part process to go into the ground is about. But when it comes to the branch, are you trying to mimic a specific gland? What is the purpose of that? Like, are you trying to mimic forehead gland, preorbital gland? Like, what are you trying to do with that?
Yeah, sure. I'm so glad you asked this, because you see preorbital and forehead all the time for branch products. Because I think to the average consumer that makes the most sense, because the deer rub their face on it, right? A deer's head will get like oily, and those glands play a part in the profile that's on there. But around deer and dead deer, what gland during the is incredibly dominant? The tarsal gland? Yeah, like, that's the only gland that actually excretes. So when you walk up to a dead buck and he's in the rut and you're downwind of him, you're like, he smells ruddy, right? You're smelling that tarsal gland. You're not smelling preorbital gland or forehead gland. My point is, the prominent gland during the rut that makes the most scent and is the most full. And if you listen to the Mississippi Deer Lab, there's some research that they did over the course of the past few years that actually is leading them. People need to go listen to it, because it kind of changed. It made some things made sense to me, but they're saying essentially when the buck's tarsal gland changes going into the rut and they urinate, when they pee down their back of their legs and the tarsal and they urinate, that actually chemically triggers the does to know that the bucks are ready to breed, like ready. And in a 7 to 10 day window from that, they will. So there was some research that they had that was suggesting that the bucks actually are the ones that have a chemical signal also that is important for getting the whole party started. And that will chemically the does to then come into heat. And it's Mississippi. They did it last year. It's like Scrapes and Rubs, Myths versus Truths or something. It was fascinating to listen to. And then they also explain preorbital and forehead glands don't excrete. It doesn't get a pressure and a liquid that gets pushed out of it, whereas the tarsal gland actually does. And deer go crazy for tarsal gland. So that's I think what makes our product work, is that we created something that smells as much as tarsal gland as anything that I've ever smelled. And that's that musty undertone that's in the branch catalyst, and is actually what makes the deer go, dude, where is that? I need to check that. And like I said, we have enough testimonials now from customers that have used the product over the course of the year. And it's like, I was listening to another guy's podcast a few back, and just randomly, and a guy said, yeah, I used DH3 branch catalyst and put it on there. And within 24 hours, I had every shooter that was in the area come and hit that. He goes, I never anything like it, you know, and I've used all these products, and I was like, that's the stuff I want people to hear, you know, because it's a lot different when it comes from like a random customer that has no level of investment into the product other than you utilizing it and like saying it's legit. You know, people recognize guys like Tony Peterson and stuff when they hear him say like, yeah, there's something there. It actually works, and I think that it is, and that's why we branded our product Branch Catalyst, and not, if you actually look at the companies that label their product or brand their product as forehead gland or orbital gland, it'll say forehead gland. Oh, what's the verbiage of it? There's a little minor detail under there that, you know, says not replica or something of that. I wish I could think of what the heck the name, but when you look at the fine print.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, when you look at the fine print, it tells you that it's not actually forehead gland. But ultimately what you're trying to do is get the organic deer herd to start interacting with the licking branch. And then that's about scrapes. The good ones run themselves, you know, you get it up and running.
It's the initial, you're trying to get that initial hit. And then after that, then they fire up on their own. Yeah.
And you can do it. You could go out and set a scrape up in September, and it'll get hammered all year, you know. But in that week, it's going to get a lot of activity. It's interesting. Now I've been doing this for a while. I'll go set scrapes up, and I'll put cameras on them, like the first 3, 4, 5 days, week, 10 days or whatever of a ton of activity, and then they go dead because the scent has dissipated and been gone, and the deer just naturally didn't want to be there, so they're not coming back. And I'm like, they're telling me something. Like I don't want that. I want one where they're interacting with it, and then, you know, maybe it slows up a touch or whatever. Is going and consistent. You know, you shouldn't have to be out there every week monkeying with the thing, and if you do, you're probably doing yourself more harm than.
Yeah, people are probably trying to sell you products if they're saying you need to freshen it up every week.
I always freshen it up every go in. If I was a good salesman, that's probably what I would say.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, that and for cost effectiveness and things of that nature, it's like you could buy a scrape kit and you could set up, you know, half a dozen scrapes. It's 2 8-ounce cylinders. There's 2 different scrape kits on our site now. Basically, the sweet aromatic tone is the differentiating factor. The gland is the same. You could go out there with a kit, which is 8 ounces of synthetic urine and 8 ounces of branch catalyst, and you could probably set up a half a dozen scrapes. And out of that half dozen, maybe you get into season and 2 or 3 of them are really rock on. I mean, you're, for the cost spend, $39.99 for the 2 kits, like per ounce. There's a lot of products that have 2 to 4 ounces of scent for $29, $30. So we're at 16 ounces for $39. So bang for buck right there. You know, by that metric, cost efficiency and effectiveness was one of the reasons why I like the product too.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense, man. So at the time this is going out, new website will be livedeerhuntersynthetics.com. Is that correct? And also, as far as like, obviously, like the first, how you and I got connected and how a lot of people will probably know you is through the podcast, the Deer Hunter podcast, which is still going strong and doing well. Love it. You've always been extremely authentic. Always enjoyed that process. You've also brought, your buddy Joe in, which I enjoy listening to him, hearing him in there. Byron's been on the podcast before. Great dude and everything else. So, yeah. And so definitely recommend people check that out as well. Am I missing anything?
No,
there?
man, I appreciate that. It just goes back to, surround yourself with good people and having a team, and they'll do better than you ever could individually. And that's, why those guys have been working with me and helping me, and things are going good. Yeah. So, Hunter Synthetics is up and operational. It was formerly DH3. We have the old website, DH3, pointed to Deer Hunter Synthetics. So people that still have that in their history or cache and search DH3, it'll redirect them to Deer Hunter Synthetics. DeerHunterPodcast.com. Yeah, we publish a podcast weekly. Typically go out on Friday. And then later this summer, we were hoping around 4th of July, but probably later this summer going into the fall. We're launching another website for gear, and it's hard and soft goods for the modern day deer hunter, everything made in the United States. So we got a camo pattern, and we're working with the U.S. to make some pretty simplistic but technical mobile hunting pieces with like some. Well, my buddy said it. He said in the tech industry, they always say like applications and software are future ready. And he said when we put our camo out that it's future ready. So we got a camo pattern that's going to be on some gear. We're going to have pretty much a full system from underwear, base layers, pants, hoodie, neck gaiter, hand muff, hat. And we actually have a cool product that is something that I've utilized for a while that I haven't seen in the space too much yet, which is a hat liner. It's like a base layer for your head. You can buy a 3-pack of them. Bamboo, super soft. They dry super fast, but you can get them sweated up, pull it off, throw it in your bag, put another one on, dry your head out real quick. You do a 3-day hunt, your head and gets funky and your hat starts itching and all that. Like we have these bamboo, which are antimicrobial hat liners, and we're doing 3-packs of them, and it's like a base layer for to go under the hat. So we're launching Deer Hunter gear probably sometime in July or August, and there will be some others coming and being added to that. But in the now the clothing's been a huge monster to take on. So, but other than that, Beau, I don't have anything going on. My day job, 2 kids and a wife.
Oh, you got a very streamlined process there. Well, I appreciate you taking 2.5 hours out of your evening to spend with me here, man. It was super good. It's so funny. Like when we're coming into this, I know like you and I don't typically need like an outline going into a podcast, but I had 6 bullet points. I think we hit half of that because that's just the way that we operate. But hey, the way that means is when you come out here and hunt, we'll get to do another one and get to talk more.
Yeah.
So man, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of time still for people before deer season and then going into deer season. So there'll be a lot of opportunity. I always appreciate our conversations as much as well. And behind the scenes, you've been a good friend, and you do that thing like Jocko does, just like do your thing, and you don't ever have to tell anybody or this or that. It's like indirect leadership, just go out there in person, be a good role model, and good things will happen. So I always appreciate you, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, buddy. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to see you here soon and getting to hang out a little bit and keep it up. You're looking good. Looks like you've been working out pretty good and
I've been eating healthy, so that's for sure. I need to lose about 10 pounds too, but I'm feeling pretty good. We'll save the health and fitness stuff when you get into your for the next one. It's all about management. It's all about management at this point.
Oh, sounds good, buddy. I appreciate it. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.